Why did a man who never raised his voice let the court speak for him instead? How did my joke post about my husband's 30 seconds of fame turn into papers, served in a lobby with everyone watching? What happens when the truth you bend finally straightens in public? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Aliyah Aven, and I tell stories for brands that pretend to be brave. I use the same skill on my life. I said my husband was fine with jokes, and I said my posts were satire. I said the reel about his 30 seconds was only a test. I said many things that sounded clean. Inside, I felt hungry for light. Thomas taught math and liked quiet rooms. He asked why I kept posting about our marriage. I said it was healthy honesty. He warned me that I was turning private things into content. I said he was afraid of fun. My sister said I should own the narrative. I decided that meant I was right. Evan filmed me on a rooftop and called it art. I told myself it was collaboration, not betrayal. I told myself need was a plan. At home, we drank from separate mugs. A guest bed looked touched. A printer made soft sounds at night. I noticed a calendar ping on his phone that said, meeting, personal, and I told myself it was nothing. I believed the crowd would love me. I believed the crowd would keep me safe. I was certain I could manage fallout. I started the night in our small kitchen. I held my phone up to the light and played a draft reel. I said it was only a tone test. I said a short joke about a teacher husband who solves things too fast was funny and clean. Thomas watched the sink fill. He asked why I needed to post about us at all. I said people like real couples. He asked if I wanted him to be a punchline. I said the joke was not about him, and I smiled like that ended it. He looked tired. He stirred his tea and said privacy mattered. I said brands win when they are bold, and I am a brand too. He said a marriage is not a campaign. I said a campaign is not a crime. I told myself I was calm and smart. Our daughter slept in the next room. I walked soft. I set 2 mugs on 2 counters because I did not want the clink of ceramic to make a sound. My sister texted and said the reel would pull numbers if I pushed a part 2. I wrote back that I would do it later. I told myself this was work. I wore my work face in my own house. Thomas opened his laptop on the table. I saw a spreadsheet with initials and dates. He closed it fast. He said he was preparing notes. I said he was trying to score me like homework. He did not answer. He rinsed his mug and set it near the sink, far from mine. I told myself he liked distance because he liked control. I explained to myself that distance made me free. I sent a link to Evan and asked him for creative feedback. He replied with a thumbs up. He said the timer gag was perfect. He said a rooftop would help. I said a rooftop would be easy. I told myself this was all harmless art. I told myself I owed the world honesty. I did not ask if honesty needs consent. I walked to the hallway and scrolled through comments on old posts. People laughed at my brave lines. People clapped for my clean burn. I chose to see only the claps. I liked a meme that matched my tone. I felt my chest warm. I stood taller. I looked over my shoulder at the guest room door. The bedspread had a corner lifted and smoothed back, like someone had tested it. I told myself it was dusting. I told myself no one slept there. I did not ask. I came back to the kitchen and found an unsealed envelope near the outbox. It had no name. I lifted the flap. It was empty. I said the envelope was odd. Thomas said it would be used later. I asked later for what. He said it was not urgent. He dried his hands and wiped the counter. I said he was cold. He said he was careful. I said careful was cruel. He looked at our daughter's lunchbox and checked the zipper. I felt small for a moment and then angry again. Small is not my color. I posted the reel to my close friends list and said it was satire. I used a caption that said, "Most problems only need 30 seconds. I added a timer emoji. I told myself I had not used a name. I told myself I was safe. I told myself he could not prove anything because nothing was said. I forgot that people can read. Thomas asked me to stop. I said he was afraid of fun. He said he did not want to be content. I said I wanted to be seen. He asked seen by whom? I said everyone. He looked down at his phone and stopped the alarm. The screen showed a calendar dot. I saw a title before it went dark. It read, Downtown 2:30 p.m. I asked what it was. He said it was personal. I said marriage means no secrets. He said respect is not a secret, and he walked away. He took a blanket and went down the hall. The guest room door moved. I stood in the light of the kitchen and watched shadows. The house smelled like printer toner. I heard a faint start and stop from the room we use as a study. I asked if he was printing. He said he was not. I said the machine makes noise by itself sometimes. He did not reply. I told myself the night was still mine. I scheduled a second post for the weekend and set my phone face down. Then I heard the door latch click, quiet and firm, and the floor felt soft under my feet. A calendar reminder on the fridge glowed red as if it could hear us. I pressed my lips and told myself there was no fire. I touched the phone again in case it buzzed. In the morning, I walked into the studio like nothing was wrong. The office smelled like markers and stale coffee. Screens were bright with mock-ups. I wore a jacket that said I knew what I was doing. I set my bag down and opened Slack. A coworker sent a message with a screenshot. The image showed my reel. The caption was mine. The joke was mine. The username was mine. The bright green circle around the story said, Close friends, but below it a comment from someone I did not know said she had seen it in a local meme group. I asked how that was possible. The coworker said someone must have saved it and shared. I said it was fine. I said it was satire. I said our brand loves edge. The coworker did not answer. My manager, Priya, pinged me and asked for a quick word when I had a moment. I said now was fine. She stepped from her desk and walked to the glass meeting room. People looked at me but looked away when I met their eyes. I felt the old rush in my chest. I told myself this was attention. I told myself attention means power. In the room, Priya asked if the post was about my husband. I said it was a fictional composite. She asked if he taught her to school in our city. I said many people teach in our city. She said a client had seen it and asked questions about our brand values. I said honesty is a value. She said safety is a value too. She asked if I could remove the post. I said removal looks like guilt. She said we needed to protect the firm. I said I am the firm's bravest voice. She said I was an employee, not a campaign. I smiled and said that was a nice line. I left the room and wrote to my sister. I said the office was spooked. She replied that fear is proof the content hits. She said I should own the narrative. I typed a new story that said the post was satire and that people who do not get jokes should read more. I hit publish. My phone buzzed with hearts from Cass and Nia. I felt tall again. I forgot about gravity. Thomas sent one line to my phone. He said, please stop. I read it and took a screenshot. I sent the screenshot to my friend Chat with a comment about control. Cass sent a laughing face. Nia sent a rocket. I felt brave. I said to myself that someone had to be brave. I took the train home at lunch to grab my charger. The apartment was quiet. A faint smell of toner hung in the air. On the desk, a printer spat a blank page and then hummed. I said the machine was haunted. I picked up the page and laughed to the empty room. A thin binder labeled Utilities sat on a chair. It felt heavier than bills. I opened it a little and saw neat tabs. I closed it. I said out loud that Thomas had become boring. Then I looked at the guest room. The bed looked even flatter, like hands had made it and then smoothed every wrinkle until there was nothing. Back at the studio, my HR partner, Leo, sent a link to a policy page. The page used simple words about public conduct and family respect. I skimmed it and told myself it was for other people. I posted a meme that said, If the shoe fits, buy two. I liked how sharp it looked on my feed. I felt the rush again. Late afternoon, I saw a new follow from a client marketing manager. I sent a private note and said our brand is edgy and brave, and that is why we win. He did not reply. I told myself he was busy. At 5, Priya walked by and said we would regroup tomorrow. I said perfect. I opened the office chat and dropped a link to a rooftop mixer that night. Evan sent a thumbs up and said he could make it. He said the light would be good after sunset. I said this would be part 2 of the story. I told myself I was steering. I told myself I was in front of the car, not under it. I packed my bag and looked around the floor. People avoided my eyes again. A woman at the far desk read something on her phone and then looked at me with a small frown. I smiled back like I was on a stage. In my pocket, the group chat pinged fast. A coworker in the kitchen said the client had questions. The buzz carried from desk to desk like a small storm. I felt heat, but I called it light. I walked to the elevator with a swing in my step. At the glass doors, Priya touched my arm and said, in a soft voice, that she needed a quick word first. Behind us, the open office lights reflected on the glass. My phone jumped in my hand as the group chat pinged again and again. I told myself it was just noise. I told myself the noise meant I was winning. I met Evan on the rooftop just before sunset. The sky looked orange and soft, and the air felt like a stage light on my face. He said the city line would make the reel sharper. I said it would make me look like I had a life. He laughed and said we should do 3 takes and cut the best one. I said we should do more because the timer gag needed rhythm. I could feel the old rush in my chest. I told myself I was turning pain into art. I told myself that made me good. People stood in groups with tall glasses and phones. Cass waved me over and said the last post had legs. Nia said I should lean in and talk about a teacher husband who graded too fast at home. I said it was satire about modern love and attention span. Evan raised the camera and told me to start with a whisper. I told the camera that some partners rush every task as if a bell might ring. A man nearby looked at me and then at the camera. I kept going and said, a wise woman knows how to make 30 seconds work. Cass clapped like I had said something holy. I looked across the rooftop and saw a woman frown. She said I was punching down. I said, comedy bends rules. She said this was not comedy if a child could read it. I said she did not understand the internet and that the internet loves honesty. I liked how firm my voice sounded in my head. Evan said we should add text stickers and a beep each time I paused. He said suspense sells. I said I could add a line about a school schedule, so the hint felt real. He said the hint was gold. A group of men near the rail started a toast chant. Cass raised her glass. Nia told me to give them a line. I lifted my phone with the timer filter and smiled at the lens the way I had practiced. I said some men think slow work is weak. The group laughed because the line let them off the hook. The camera phones lifted. I felt heat on my skin. The chant grew louder. Someone yelled for the name. Evan nodded at me like a director. I said we would tell the truth in part 2 if the numbers proved worth it. The rooftop leaned toward me as if pulled by a string. My phone buzzed in my palm. I glanced down and saw unknown caller. I let it ring until it cut to voicemail. I told myself that calls during recording were disrespect. The chant kept time while Evan counted me back in. He said the energy was perfect. He said this moment was my moment. I loved that. I started part 2 with a softer tone and said some people should not assign homework in the bedroom if they want extra credit. A woman near the bar said I should be kind to my spouse. I said, kindness is honesty. Cruelty is silence. She shook her head and walked away. I called her a prude in my heart. Cass said the woman was jealous. Nia said to tag a meme page. I tagged it and added the city school emoji for spice. After the crowd broke, Evan said he could pitch the clip to a podcast that likes messy marriages. I said they could call me. He said the story needed a twist, maybe a third person, maybe an ex. I thought about Thomas and felt a small stone in my stomach, then pressed it down. I said, art wants risk. He said the crowd was ready for a reveal. The wind picked up and blew my hair across my face. For a second, I felt cold, and then told myself cold is dramatic. I went home late and pushed the key into the door. The apartment was dark and neat. The faint smell of toner snapped in the air like a rubber band. From the study, I heard the hum of the shredder, and then the quiet click as it stopped. I said the machine needed maintenance. In the kitchen, the two mugs stood on opposite counters, like they were strangers. I opened the fridge and saw a sticky note on the shelf that said, "Bring forms." I told myself the note was about school field trips. I put the note in the trash and told myself I keep us from drowning in paper. I checked my phone and saw the unknown caller had left a voicemail. I played it with the volume low and heard a calm voice state my name and say a message would also be sent by email. The voice did not say anything else. I told myself it was spam. I went to the bedroom and rehearsed what I would write for the Morning Post. I wrote a caption that said, "Satire saves marriages." I scheduled it and lay back. I thought of the rooftop chant and decided it had sounded like applause. I fell asleep, smiling. The next evening, we went to a family restaurant for Carol's birthday. The long table had balloons and a cardboard crown for Mira. The room was loud with clinks and soft with old songs. I put on a bright sweater and told myself I was a daughter-in-law who tried. Carol sat at the head of the table, tall and straight, and nodded to me without a smile. Thomas sat near Mira and kept his arm on the back of her chair. He asked Mira about school in a quiet way. She answered with a small voice and a small smile. I told myself they were being dramatic for the room. I moved around to get a pretty cake photo. I asked everyone to crowd in. A cousin held up a phone and said he had seen my reel. I laughed and said reels are theatre. He said it sounded like a teacher in our city. I said many teachers live here. He said people knew. I said people like to think they know. Carol looked at me with the kind of calm that makes you sit up. She said dignity was not old-fashioned. I said dignity could live with jokes. She said jokes often travel without context. I said followers understand tone. Thomas lifted the cake knife and asked me in a normal voice to sit and eat. I said I would after I posted the story, because family deserves nice posts. He set the knife down and went back to Mira. When the candles were lit, Cass sent me a text and asked if I had tagged the meme page again. I smiled at the phone and typed a yes. The cousin turned his screen and played my latest clip for the nearest people. The sound of the timer filter beeped through the room. A waitress looked over. Two distant tables went quiet for a second and then picked up their talk again. Carol placed her hand flat next to her plate and said the room should celebrate and not debate. I said I was not debating, I was explaining satire. A man at the far end said teachers in the neighborhood work hard. I said satire touches work, because work touches life. The sentence felt strong in my head and heavy in the air. Mira leaned toward me and asked if kids at school would see the video. Her voice was small and careful, like a person stepping around glass. I said no one would know it was about her father, because we had not used names. She asked if his students could guess. I said students are busy. Thomas put his hand over hers and said dessert was next. I felt the room push me to the edge of my chair. After the plates were cleared, Thomas went to pay early. He did not ask for help. He did not wave the receipt. He was simply gone for a minute and then back with Mira's jacket. He said he would take Mira to the car so she could rest. I said we had barely started the evening. He said he would not argue in front of family. I said he was making me look cold. He said he would not discuss me or the internet tonight. He kept his tone even and low, and in that even tone, I heard a wall. I wanted to kick the wall and also lean on it. In the parking lot, I walked ahead to get a long shot with balloons in the frame. I posted a defensive carousel about how humor heals and how prudish minds fear mirrors. I told myself the caption would win the room after the fact. Carol came out with her coat on and stood next to me. She said Mira had asked 2 teachers today if jokes can be mean. I said kids ask questions. It is good. Carol said children ask because they look for a door out of shame. I said there was no shame because no names were said. She looked past me at Thomas buckling Mira into her seat. I felt small again and did not like it. As Thomas put the cake box in the trunk, I saw an open tote with 3 neat binders. The spines said home, auto, bank. The labels were square and straight. On his keyring, I saw a new, unfamiliar key. It was plain and metal, not like our apartment keys. It looked like a door I had not opened. My chest turned tight for a moment, and then I told myself, organize people by boxes for fun. He checked his phone and locked it fast. For a second, I saw a calendar tile that said, meeting, personal for tomorrow morning. I told myself it was therapy for his pride. I told myself therapists always take early slots. I stepped closer and asked if he would come back to the table for the family photo. He said he would not. I said people would assume he was upset. He said he would not perform. I said his silence was loud. He said his silence was needed. Carol put a hand on his shoulder and said they would go. I watched the car pull away and told myself it was only a small scene, not a full act. I checked my phone and saw comments rising again under the new carousel. Some were cheering. Some were asking if the teacher was my husband. I said in a reply that a good story lives beyond names. That sentence felt clever and also like a rope around something I could not see. I stood alone in the parking lot, with leftover balloons leaning against my hip. The restaurant door opened behind me. A cousin stepped out and said the room had quieted after we left the table. He asked if I wanted to come back in. I said I had to take a call. My phone lit up with a banner that said, meeting, personal on Thomas's shared family calendar for tomorrow morning, even though he kept most alerts private. I stared at the banner and put the phone down face first on the hood of our car. The air felt colder than before. A slow car passed along the curb, and Mr. Beltran from our building drove it. He looked at me and then back to the road. I could feel a story forming in his mouth for the neighbors. I told myself neighbors were harmless. I told myself I knew how to turn any rumor into fuel. The balloons tapped against my sleeve like small hands. I went back inside for my purse. Carol was at the door paying for a small extra dessert. She said in a low voice that speech has weight and that I should rest my arms. I said I could carry it. She said arms shake later. I left before she could say more. At the curb, I opened my ride app and raised my hand to wave. The wind moved a napkin along the asphalt like a small white fish. My phone buzzed with new comments and a few direct messages from strangers. I told myself attention means safety. Then I saw the open trunk in my mind again, the binders lined up in calm order, and the new key in the light. My stomach rolled. I fixed my smile and stared at the screen. I stood on the balcony that night and stared at the city like it could vote for me. I told myself the apology video needed his approval, because an apology from both of us would break the storm. I walked back in and found him in the hallway holding Mira's backpack. He said she would stay with Carol for a few nights to keep the noise away. I said that looked like punishment. He said it looked like rest. I said rest would come after he defended me online. He said he would not perform. At school pickup earlier, he had stood a few steps away from the cluster of parents. He had typed a note and slid his phone down when I came close. A small preview at the top read, "Follow up." I told him I wanted dinner together to show unity. He said he would keep things simple for Mira. I said simple meant weak. He said simple meant safe. In the kitchen, 2 mugs sat on opposite counters like guard posts. I filmed a soft-lit apology and tried a line about context collapse. He watched for a moment and then looked at his laptop. I reached for the trackpad. He closed the lid and said he needed to finish something. I said he could finish after the video. He said the video should stop. I said silence was consent. He said silence was a boundary. When he left the room, I lifted the lid again. On the screen, I saw a clean desktop with folders named Archive A and Archive B. A small window announced a file had uploaded successfully. I felt a pinch and then a swell of anger. I told myself files cannot compete with followers. I opened a drawer and found a single USB stick labeled with today's date. I told myself he was making a scrapbook. I closed the drawer and it clicked shut before he walked back in. I went to the study and saw a thin binder labeled Utilities on the chair, thicker than bills. On a high shelf, a taxes folder had a small tape strip on its back. I touched it and felt a tiny shape under the paper. I left it alone and pretended I had not seen it. My phone gave a small alarm that I had set during lunch. The label read, Paper Drop. I told myself it was just a reminder for work forms and turned it off. He packed an overnight bag for Mira with quiet care. He checked her book and slid in a folded note. I said I was being treated like a villain while I tried to protect our brand of love. He said he would handle the situation properly. He did not raise his voice. He did not ask for anything. He said only that one sentence and moved past me. I felt the room tilt. I followed him to the balcony and asked if he meant therapy or a statement. He said he meant proper steps. I said he should define steps. He said definitions would come in time. I said delay is control. He said pace is mercy. He took his keys from the tray. I noticed a plain silver key I had not seen before. My chest tightened, and then I breathed in and named the feeling strategy. He left for Carol's. I stayed and tried to post the apology anyway. I stared at my face and saw fear behind the soft light. I replaced fear with firmness and pressed record again. From the study, I heard the printer spool once and stop. My phone buzzed with a missed call labeled No Caller ID. I pressed the side button and set it down. The desk drawer he had used earlier gave a quiet click as if it had locked itself. I told myself, calm men bluff. I told myself tomorrow I would force a public fix. Hook trigger action, his calm promise to handle it properly, and the single spool of the printer. I walked into the office tower lobby the next day, rehearsing a speech for Priya about satire and brand edge. The marble floor was bright like a stage, and the reception guard watched the turnstiles. I lifted my chin and told myself I was still employable. The elevator doors opened, and Priya stepped out with Leo from HR. I smiled and started my pitch. A man with a messenger bag approached and asked for my name in a steady voice. I said yes without thinking. He handed me a thick packet and told me it was a civil complaint and a takedown demand related to my posts and reels that identified my husband by his work and city. He said I was now served. The lobby camera blinked red behind him. The sound of the elevator bell came again, soft and final. For 1 second, the packet felt heavier than my bag. I said it was satire and fair comment. The man nodded once and walked away. Priya asked if I was well enough to talk. Leo said the firm must act under policy while the matter proceeds. He said the posts created a risk for family-friendly clients and for internal culture. I tried to open my phone to post a new story before the moment cooled. The app showed a notice that my last upload had been removed under a privacy complaint. My thumb shook against the glass. Priya said she was placing me on unpaid leave pending outcome. Leo said my badge access would be paused. I said this was an overreaction to a joke. He said the policy forbids public disparagement of family when harm to a named or implied person is predictable. He said the lobby camera and witnesses would note the service. He asked for my badge. I stood very straight and told him I deserved a chance to explain online. He said I was free to consult counsel and to follow the takedown demand. He said the company would not block my personal speech, but would protect clients and staff. He did not sound angry. He sounded like a clock. I turned toward the glass wall. Outside, Thomas stood across the plaza with Carol beside him and Mira holding her hand. He did not come in. He did not raise a hand. He looked at me like a teacher waiting for a page to turn. The plaza felt far and near at once. I lifted my phone to film the packet and my face together. Security asked me to stop recording in the lobby. I lowered the phone like it had burned me. I moved to the turnstiles to go upstairs for my things. I tapped my badge. The light flashed red, and the gate stayed closed. A long tone sounded, flat and public. A few people turned their heads. I tried again, and the same tone came. Leo said he would escort me for a quick collection. My cheeks felt hot, and the marble floor felt loud under my shoes. I held the packet against my side as if it could change shape. I looked once more through the glass. Thomas had already turned with Carol and Mira toward the street. The door of the building opened for someone else and closed again with a clean latch. The sound was small and full. The turnstile light stayed red. The moment ended. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.